I do think that there are a lot more women available
Yeah,
than
I agree.
men are available
I
for
agree.
believers. For believers,
I
you
get
know what I'm
you.
saying?
I
Like
get you. I'm with that.
for people who are genuinely pursuing Christ,
Yeah.
I do think there's a lot more women who are pursuing the Lord, genuinely, authentically, with integrity, that have character, than there are men.
What is up, everyone? We are back with another episode of Shaping the Culture. Let's just get to it. The whole secular sacred divide. There is no distinction in the scriptures. Some of us have trust issues with God, and some of us, yeah, it's like, does God really got us? You can't engage the culture with the gospel that first has not engaged you. Like, you know how people are like, oh, that's just who I am. Nah.
Drop the mic. Drop the mic. Drop the mic.
Shaping the code. What is up, everyone? We are back with another episode of Shaping the Culture. Hope all is well with you all, fam. Listen, I am so thrilled and excited for this conversation with a dear brother of mine. The guest that we have today is really no guest to the show. He's been on a couple of times, and every time he steps in, he be just dropping mad gems, mad gems. Now, the reason why I'm really excited about this episode is because you guys are going to get an inside scoop on conversations I have with him when the cameras are off. Unfiltered, raw. It's going to be real, but it's going to be edifying. It's going to build you up. And I'm excited. This is a good friend of mine. We've been through thick and thin together. He's someone I call on when I need wisdom, when I need prayer, when I need comfort. We know how to hang out and have a good time, and at the same time get deep in the word and talk leadership, ministry, all things. And so we've got none other than Pastor Israel with us in the building. What's good, bro?
What's up, man? Thanks for having me, bro.
Good to have you in the building.
Yes, sir. This is you're right. This is an inside scoop into our conversations, and I'm excited, bro.
You think they're ready for it?
I don't think so, bro. I
I
might
don't
have to be
know.
a little filtered, to be honest.
Why though? You're on Shaping the Culture, bro. You're not speaking at
That's true,
Perishing
man.
Church.
That's true. That's true. I gotta shape the culture, bro. I gotta shape it with vulnerability.
Listen, you can't shape the
That's true.
culture if you're not real, dog. You know what I'm saying?
That's true, man. Hey, y'all heard that?
The, the,
Y'all
the only
heard
thing I
that?
ask is you don't cuss on here, bro. No, I'm just kidding.
All right, bro. I know I'm from LA, all right, but all right.
Oh man.
Yeah,
Anyways,
everyone he thinks LA is just vibes only, man.
it's all vibes,
Yeah.
bro. It's all
Man, we
vibes.
have substance up in here, bro.
You guys do. You guys do have substance. I can't take that away from y'all. Not always, but you guys do. You guys have pockets of substance for sure, no doubt.
Whatever,
No doubt.
man. Whatever, man.
Anyway, so we talk about relationships, dating, singleness, marriage quite a bit. I think
We do.
maybe not a lot actually, but it does pop up every once in a while. And I think it does come up because I'm single. You've been married for like 50 years, and so there's just a lot of differences. This man got married at age 9, bro. He's got like 5 kids and a dog. Yeah. He's got a grandchild on the way.
I rebuke that boy.
But you have been married. How long
Dang.
you been married for?
And 2 weeks next week. No, 2 weeks is gonna be 8 years, bro.
God, 8 years. You don't look like you've been married 8 years.
Yeah.
Praise God.
Hey, praise God. Black don't crack, man.
Hey, there it is. There it is. But we get real conversations. You get an unfiltered depiction of singleness in 2024,
I
and
do.
you talk to me about marriage and what that looks like 8 years in with 2 kids. And so
Yeah.
I always tell single people, one of the best ways to prepare for marriage is by surrounding yourself with other married folks. And so I've been blessed and encouraged, inspired, challenged, convicted by watching you love your family, serve your family, and just getting all the inside scoops and the insights on what marriage really is, because Hollywood portrays it to be this honeymoon phase, this beautiful thing, this easy thing. As
Yeah.
long as you got love, you got everything you need. But I've learned so much just watching you love Ray and Ray love you, and you guys love all your kids. And so I guess my first question I wanted to ask is, yeah, what are your thoughts when it comes to, as you on the other side of it look at us and watch how we're going about things? What are your thoughts and how do you feel about it all?
About like singleness or
Just
marriage or relationships in general?
yeah, and the way we go about it.
Yeah. And the way that you go about it. Well, I mean, it depends, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like I've talked to a wide spectrum of people.
Yeah.
You know, like I've talked to healthy people who go about it in a healthy way.
Yeah.
And I've talked to unhealthy people who go about it in unhealthy ways. And then I've talked to two people who one is healthy, one is not. They, you know what I'm saying, trying to date. I've talked to two unhealthy people. I mean, I've talked to two unhealthy people trying to date, whatever. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's, I definitely am glad that I'm not single in this day and age, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's number one.
Yeah.
I feel like, man, it is incredibly challenging right now. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Like all the conversations that I've had with people, it is like really hard out there to date, I think for women, finding a man with character, but also
Mm.
someone who's not weird, you know what I mean, at the same time. You know what I mean? And then I think for men, maybe, uh, yeah, it's again, it's different. Like,
Finding someone
yeah,
with
man,
character and not weird.
yeah, I mean, maybe this might be a, you know, what is it, a hot topic, but I do think that there are a lot more women available
Yeah,
than
I agree.
men are available
I
for
agree.
believers, for believers.
I
You
get
know what I'm
you.
saying? Like
Yeah,
for
I'm with that.
people who are genuinely pursuing Christ.
Yeah.
I do think there's a lot more women who are pursuing the Lord, genuinely, authentically, with integrity. That have character than there are men,
Yeah.
which is very sad. Um,
Yeah.
very sad, to be honest. So I thought it was just a LA thing, but it's actually I mean, would you agree? Right? It's a pretty
Yeah. Yeah.
national
It's a
epidemic.
it's definitely an epidemic, bro. It's an epidemic.
Yeah,
Yeah. But I will say though, I think just how there's an emphasis on men to step up in character. I do think that that's not always the key. I have seen instances and I have seen scenarios and situations where, the woman also has to step up in character. I think the
hmm.
misconception is because a woman is in the church, she's following the Lord.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah,
that's not always the case. I think
for sure.
there's a frustration on with men, and rightfully so, and I agree 1,000%. They're not in the church. They're not consistent with the church. They're not serving the church, and that's all true. But I do think that just because someone goes to church faithfully or consistently means they're in their word, they're growing in character, they've got accountability, they're submitted to leadership, all of that good stuff. So
Right. Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. Yeah, man. I think it's so funny too. Like when people look for, I feel like the things are getting so dry out there right now
Yeah.
that people are beginning to compromise on
Mm,
character. You know what I
mm,
mean?
yeah. Wow.
And people are beginning to compromise on, like, where people are at with their faith. Like, I've talked to people who are like, well, she breathes, so I'm just gonna date her. You know what I mean? Like, or vice versa. And
Yeah.
with women pursuing men, and so I think, man, it's really sad to see that, like, people are getting, people that I know that really love the Lord, man, are like compromising on things that they would have never compromised,
Mm,
5 years ago, just because
yeah.
they're so not desperate. Desperate is the wrong word, but they're so,
They're
like,
yearning.
they're yearning for, um, a relationship,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so. yeah, that kind of begs the question of like, you know, I mean, I want to ask you this actually as a single person, like being around so many married people, do you feel the pressure to like get married? You know what I mean? Is that like, what is your,
Yeah.
yeah, you know what I mean? Like, that's something I always try to do when I'm talking to single folks is like, oh, bring up relationship, bring up marriage in the sense of like, oh,
Yeah.
this is like the pinnacle of the Christian life. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like this
Right.
is like, man, if you reach marriage,
Right.
man, you're like you've reached it. And I think it's such a huge misconception that
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
marriage is the goal of life, you know?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think this is a good conversation to have. I think for me, I've got different seasons. It hits in different waves. Um, you know, I just want to first yes and amen, or second what you said about the compromises piece. Not that I agree with it, but it's real, bro. As a 32-year-old single man, the temptation to compromise in areas are in some areas of the dating world is a lot more prevalent than it was 5 years ago. I think there was this, and the Lord has been really speaking to me about this and convicting me about it because, I think part of the reason why I'm more tempted to do things I wouldn't have done in my 20s is because I thought that I would be married by now. And the Lord has
Mm,
just kind of been challenging me and showing me that, you didn't hold off or wait or honor me because you believed my ways were right and true and holy, but because you thought that, you had more faith in your timeline of getting married than you did my ways. And I think that that's something that I've been
yeah,
repenting of because I'm just kind of like, it's easy to hold off when you think you're going to get married in 3, 4, 5 years. It's another thing to hold
yeah,
off when you don't know if this will ever happen. And so
yeah.
you're put to the test and you're forced to ask the question, do I trust that God's ways are true and righteous and holy and good for me, even when I'm still single in my 30s, right?
Yeah.
The whole purity talk is cute in high school, but what we don't have those conversations in your 30s. You know what I'm saying? Like for some reason, like, sexual sin is reserved for high school students and college students, but bro, it's a thing for
Yeah,
everyone at any stage of
100%.
like single or married, really. But we
Yeah,
think that we've graduated from that talk because we're now in our
yeah,
30s. And I think for me, I've learned over the years, and the Lord has really been convicting me of this, like, hey, trust me in your 30s the way you trusted me in your 20s.
yeah,
Surrender your timeline and stop giving God these ultimatums that if this doesn't happen in this timeline, then you're going to do it your way, as if your way is going to be any better than God's way. And so
right.
I wanted to start off there, but to answer your question about the difficulty of it, I think there was a season in my life where I felt like I had to get married and I was really frustrated that I wasn't married. And then, I got a little bit older, like my late 20s, I started to realize the gift and the blessing of singleness. And then all my friends getting married, the honeymoon phase started phasing out in the late 20s, early 30s. And so I was able to see firsthand how hard marriage is, bro.
Yeah,
It's hard. It's beautiful, but
okay.
it's also hard. And I saw my friends dealing with real life, and I'm out here catching flights every other week, following my passions and living out my dreams.
Yeah,
And
I'm
then
tired of you texting me telling me, "Hey, you want to go to Vegas tomorrow?" I'm like, "Really, bro?" Like,
hey, bro, you were supposed to put me on blast like that. But but that
for
but
ministry,
that
for ministry,
for ministry, yeah, it is for real
right?
ministry.
It really is.
uh, People won't believe it tuning in.
I know.
But there was a season then where I was like, oh snaps, like you can keep the heartache, like let me just do my thing. And then I think now I'm in a season where I don't know, maybe it's because the Lord is preparing me for marriage, but I'm like, all right, I see the difficulty of marriage. I see the hardship in it alongside of all the beautiful things that comes with it. But the Lord's kind of like renewed my desire and my heart for it. I'm like, man, you know, I wanna. My mentors have always told me, you're never gonna find somebody who won't hurt you. You got to find someone that's worth being hurt for. And
Mm,
I think now that's not just head knowledge. I think that's seeped into my heart, and I'm like ready for that. And so now I'm in a
yeah,
season where I have a sober mind about marriage, and I want it, right? Whereas before I
yeah,
wanted it for the things I thought it was going to be, and all the good and pleasurable stuff about marriage, and the benefits of marriage. I think now at 32, I have a holistic picture of marriage, and I, with caution, desire it. So yeah, to answer your question, that's where I'm at with it.
yeah,
I wanted to ask you, like, you got married at a
yeah.
young age. Did you know what you're getting yourself into? And what was it like jumping in?
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely we did not know what we were getting ourselves into. You know, so I got married. When you look at my age, at the age that I got married, you don't think, oh, it's young, but it's not like that young, right? Like I
Yeah,
got married at 24,
yeah,
and then
baby.
Ray was married. Yeah, and I had just turned 24. No, 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 no. I was turning 25 when I turned 25 like a month or 2 months after I got married. But
Yeah,
so it's not that young when you think about it like that.
yeah,
Then Ray was also 22,
mm,
and so but we were really young because, and I think the reason why we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into, and our biggest regret for Ray and I is, man, we were extremely isolated.
mm,
Like when we got married, you know what I'm saying? Like there was not a lot of there's not a huge community. There's not any community of married couples,
mm,
especially older than us,
yeah,
that we were able to look up to and kind of do life with people who were able. Nobody guided us.
mm,
Nobody, what I'm saying. Nobody kind of worked through certain difficulties, certain
yeah,
things that were in our life that
yeah,
certain things that were trauma from our past, like our relation, not just our relationship, but trauma from like our individual lives that
mm,
someone was like, hey, like you should probably really deal with this before you get married. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah,
um, no, there was nobody in our life that was able to speak over us and speak to our relationship while we were dating, let alone while we were married. I think, a few months after we got married, like a lot of our friends got married, but we were all in the same, what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
we're all the same age, same kind of place in life. So it wasn't like, it was cool you know, having those relationships that we were able to, like, I don't know, we are able to talk about certain difficulties in marriage and things like that. But
yeah, yeah, yeah,
we're kind of just figuring it out versus talking to someone who has figured it out
yeah,
and who's able to speak to us. So I think that is like the biggest thing that I would say for me and Ray, and she would agree with me too, that like, man, we really wish we had an
mm,
older couple or a couple that has been married for a while to just pour into us, man. I
yeah,
mean, that would have made a giant difference, bro,
mm,
in our marriage early on, because the first couple of years were, man, incredibly hard for us, for sure.
mm, mm.
Incredibly hard.
Yeah. So how did you guys go about that then? Were you guys eventually able to find some mentors? I know you guys now have that. You guys, therapy, all of that. But
Yeah.
take us through the steps. The process. Like, how did you go from enduring such a difficult time to overcoming? Finding leadership, oversight. Getting the help you
Yeah.
need, and then loving each other the way you guys were called to.
Yeah. I feel like, there's always a process, and it's still a process for us, um but I think, number one, we both have to understand each other's, like,
Mm,
kind of personality. I'm a very people person.
mm,
I grew up not grew up, but when I got saved, like I had mentors, I had people who discipled me, who walked with me through like a bunch of life. You know what I
yeah.
mean? People
Yeah.
who are like seasoned believers, veteran believers, if you call it that,
Yeah.
were able to walk with me and disciple me. And I wasn't raised in the church. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So when I gave my life to Christ, um, there was people outside of my home that were examples for me,
Mm,
of Christ and of what it means to be a man of God and all these things. So
Yeah. Yeah.
whereas she was raised in a Christian home, and you know, obviously there's language barriers and all these different things
Yeah.
for her home. So there wasn't like, she understood the gospel, she understood Jesus, she understood like all these things at a very young age.
Yeah.
And then, but there wasn't like this one-on-one discipleship,
Mhm.
you know what I'm saying? Like for
Yeah.
her in that sense. So there wasn't like, until later on in her adolescent years, but early on there wasn't like this one-on-one, like, let me disciple you, let me, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And so that kind of created this kind of like nature in us, in me, to always seek for help, and then
Mhm.
for her to kind of just figuring out on her
On
own,
her own. Yeah.
you know, when she runs into it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
there's like this, so there was like, so we had to first understand our personalities, that I always sought for help, and I never saw that as weakness. I never saw that as like, um, I just always sought that as necessary, like
Right.
that we always needed someone to pour into us, someone that's been there, that needs. Whereas Ray, I mean, she's a brilliant. I mean, like intellectually just brilliant, academically just brilliant person
Yeah.
who has learned how to, I mean, at a young age, just learned how to figure things out on her own. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like just
Yeah.
things, she's just so smart that she just figures things out on her own.
Yeah.
And there's never been someone who had to like teach her. Like she was literally like in college, man, she was smarter than a lot of her professors.
Wow.
Like, you know
Wow.
what I mean? Like she literally, I always tell this story because I love bragging about her, but
Yeah.
she hates the story. But you know, there's this like, there's this class that she was a pre-med student
Okay.
in college, and so every pre-med student had to take a OChem, which
Mm.
is one of the hardest like classes you can ever take in med school or
Straight
whatever,
up.
or not med school, pre-med.
Pre-med. Yeah.
And bro, this girl
Yeah.
didn't study for this exam at all. I think it was her final exam. She didn't study at all.
Yeah.
Like the test was at like 8 a.m. She came into like the library at 7 a.m. and like kind of looked over some notes, aced that mug, bro.
No way.
Just like aced that mug without even studying. I was like, what
That's
the heck? Like,
crazy.
so
Yeah.
that's kind of like the type of person that she is. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? She
Yeah.
just kind of figures things out on her own.
Yeah.
And so once I understood that, which that took me a really long time for me to understand that about her. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So so we were clashing a lot about like, hey, we need people to
Right.
actually pour into us. And then she's like, well, we can figure this thing out on our own. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, no, we need people now. She's like, and so there was like that took a really long time for us to be able to like, okay, hey, we actually do need people.
Yeah.
And so that took, yeah, I think that took us like having to reach out outside of our community. You know what I mean? Because we just didn't have that. We didn't have that in our church at the time.
Yeah.
We were a very young church. My youth pastor had just left, not youth pastor, the young adult pastor had just left, whatever. So it was literally a peer
Yeah.
led church at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. For
So
sure.
yeah, anyway, so we had to figure out each other's personality, and
Yeah.
then the next thing is being able to say, okay, like, hey, this is the need. Here's why. I had to present to her like, hey, here's what the benefit of it is. Here's how I've seen it in my life.
Yeah.
How I've seen it being beneficial in my life, and this is why we need it. And she was like, all right, cool. So then we had to reach out outside of our community, and that was hard in itself. I mean, there's just so many steps. And then by the time we felt like we're finally like kind of getting the groove
Yeah.
of, you know, finding community with people,
Yeah.
I was called to LA. You know what I mean? Like God called us to LA to plant the church. And
Yeah.
so we had to kind of start over, you know.
Yeah.
And that made it kind of difficult for us too. So yeah, you know, it's not like, it's not like this step 1, step 2, step
No.
3 thing
Yeah.
for us, but I think it can be for a
Yeah.
lot of people, you know.
You bring up something fascinating, and I'd love to hear your take on this, because this is, even you and I have had conversations about this, but what it sounds like to me is that, you know, one of the tension points early on in your marriage was, a lack of self-awareness. Uh, you saw things a certain way. She saw things a certain way. You guys didn't see eye to eye. You didn't see how Ray couldn't understand your point. Ray probably was frustrated that you couldn't see her point.
Yep.
But let me tell you something about singleness. So, and something I've got critiqued on, the pushback for a lot of times when one of the reasons why I'm still single is because I like to think I'm self-aware and I feel like I know myself too much. And I have heard from people, you've rebuked me in this way too privately, and I've had other friends too. But like just knowing too much, right, can also hinder you from jumping in. And I hear your story and I know that it was difficult and it was hard, but working that out in a covenant relationship is much more different than working that out in a
100%.
dating context. And so I wanted to kind of hear your take on like, how do you, and you can maybe even pull from our conversations, or I know you have conversations with many different type of people, but, how do you process that like one of the reasons why people aren't, making it to the altar or like going to another level of commitment is because they do know too much about themselves?
Yeah, man. Yeah, that yeah, man. We have had a lot of those conversations, and I think, I don't know if it's necessarily knowing too much about yourself
Yeah.
more than it is like knowing too much of being like, and I was literally just talking to someone about this yesterday, like
Yeah.
no, being too specific with what you want. Like I think the reality is like the older you get, the more aware you are of like, okay, I don't want that. I
Yeah.
want that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you're
Yeah.
surrounded, like you said, you have a lot of married friends. So you're like, oh, I love their relationship because of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you're like, ooh, I don't want that part of that relationship. You know what I mean? So
Right.
you're just so like, you're information overload. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
And so now you have like this box that you're like, if nobody fits this box, then it's like, it's done. I'm not going to give that person a chance.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, and not everybody's like that, right? Obviously, like this
Yeah.
is a very like, I had to like really in my conversation yesterday, I was like, all right, this is a very nuanced thing. It's not black and white. And I think per you can probably tell like, and you know this about me. I think very linearly. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
like
Linear.
linearly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think very black and white. And when it comes to this topic, what you're asking about, it's not black and white. It's very
Yeah.
nuanced. You know
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So,
You
you
weren't
know,
nuanced when you were rebuking me.
I mean, hey, I'm
I'm just
still there
kidding.
though, you know?
I'm just kidding. Yeah, you made it seem like I was
Hey,
the unforgivable sin. You know what I'm
no,
saying? No, I'm just kidding. You sound like I was
no, man,
blaspheming the Holy Spirit out
hey.
here in this.
I mean, you kind of were, man. No, I'm just kidding. No, but but the reality is though, like, I do think that like there's a lot of non-essential things
Yeah, that's
that
right.
you can let go of.
Yeah, that's
You
good.
know what I mean? There are essential things and there are non-essential things. And so,
Yeah,
um, again, you got to be able to define. I mean, I think it's important to define what non-essentials are. I mean,
yeah,
what essentials are, right? The
yeah,
essentials are committed to the faith, committed to integrity, character, and all these things. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like those
yeah,
are all very essential things.
yeah,
Um, I mean, I think the more of the issue is not people don't know themselves. I mean, people know themselves too much. I think more the issue that keeps people from the altar is they don't know themselves enough.
hmm,
I have very rarely ran into people that know too much, and that's why
hmm,
they are not married or that they're not in a relationship.
yeah. Speak on
Like
that.
you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
I'm like I'm being honest in that. Like I've probably met maybe man, maybe like three or four people that I can confidently say, wow, like you've done your research, like you know
yeah,
what you want,
yeah,
and you know exactly like you know what I'm saying, like you're very self aware, and
yeah,
to the point where it could become fault, like it's a fault to a fault
yeah,
that you're not, you know what I'm saying, like maybe in a relationship, maybe it makes it harder for you to be in a relationship because of that.
Yeah.
Um, but I've run into, I mean, hundreds, I mean, not hundreds, but a lot of people
Yeah.
who are like completely not aware of themselves.
Right.
They don't
That's
know what
right.
they want.
Yeah.
They they switch up every, they don't know their essentials. They don't know their
Mm.
non-essentials. You know what I mean? Like they're kind of just vibing out, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah.
I,
Does that make sense? I don't
yeah.
know.
Let's talk about that a little bit. What are essentials? What are non-essentials? I remember we were riding down. We were driving in LA, windows down, and we're talking about relationships. And I'm trying to paint the picture. I'm trying to invite people into the conversation.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful
Palm
day,
trees.
palm trees, the sun was out. Smiles on our faces, and talking about relationships. And you're like, bro, like, what are you even looking for? Like, what do you want in a girl? And so I just started like naming some things, and one of the things I said was like, yo, she's got to have the same taste of music as me. She's got to love hip hop. And do you remember the way you responded
I
to
do
that?
remember it. I busted out laughing. I did. Yeah, I did. I
You're
did
like,
laugh.
what? Like, what are we talking about?
I was like, that's an essential for you? I was shook. I was
Yeah.
shook.
And
No, okay,
so
but here's what. Okay, go ahead, go
go
ahead, go
go
ahead.
ahead, go ahead,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. Yeah, I'll setting you
No, you
up.
got
Take it
it.
away. Take it away.
But here's the thing though, like it was because of how much you're yearning for a relationship
Yeah.
that I was surprised
Yeah.
at that being an essential.
Mm,
You know what
yeah.
I'm saying?
That's
Like
good.
because of the like how much you desired a relationship. You're
Yeah.
like, man, I really desire a relationship.
Yeah.
But here are my essentials. She has to love Jesus,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
She has to have good character,
Yeah.
you know? She has to have good taste in music. And I'm like, hold up, man. Like, that's the same category. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was just shook. I was just shook, you know. But I don't think I would have been as shook if it was a person who was like, yeah, man. If a relationship comes, it comes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You know, I don't care. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah. But
Like,
someone,
but
yeah.
because you're, yeah, you know what I'm saying. But because you're like, man, I need to get married, bro.
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
need to find me a wife, bro. Like, this is like top priority right now, you know.
Right. 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 Top three.
And
Top
and
three.
I'm like, right, you know. And so I was like, oh, if that's like, you know what I mean. So I just shocked at the fact that like
Yeah.
that was an essential. Now it could be a preference, you know what I mean. It
Yeah.
could be like a cherry on top. It could be like,
Yeah.
yo,
Yeah.
like if she had this man, it'd be great.
Yeah.
But you don't need to. I mean, and it could be because I'm just not a music person either.
It's good. Yeah. We got to pray for that,
You know
by
what I
the
mean?
way. Yeah.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't, yeah, I think, are you the one who called me a serial killer? Because I could drive like to San Diego, from LA to San Diego with no
No
music, like
music.
just
It's
complete
wild.
silence in the car.
I actually
But someone's
can
like, yo,
too,
that's,
but I do
yeah,
love
someone's
music
like, yo,
though.
that's serial killer vibes, bro. But
Okay, so
yeah,
but
you know what I
here's
mean?
because here's the thing I wanted to point out. I learned a valuable lesson from you that day, and I think you had shared with me that the things that make your relationship with Ray work are not necessarily the non-essentials. You
Yeah.
had shared with me that you and her have two different types of humor, but you
Oh, yeah.
guys, that's not the foundation of a good relationship, having the same
Right.
humor. But me as a
Yes.
single person, that was enlightening because I'm like, what do you mean? Like, how do you guys
Yeah.
laugh and build memories and get along and things like
Yeah.
that? And so, can you kind of share some of the advice that you gave me and
Yes.
what single people need to know about the realities of marriage?
Yeah. I mean, marriage is, you know, compromise
Hmm.
and understanding. You know what I mean? Like compromise, not again, not of the essentials, not of the essential things, but you're always compromising. Like me and Ray are always in a season of like, okay, hey, like I know you don't like to do this. Like for me, I'm a very like date wise, like going on dates.
Mm.
I would much rather do movies, like
Yeah.
dinner and a movie. Call me basic, whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
You wouldn't you
I
wouldn't find
am.
you wouldn't find a wife in this day and age, bro.
Thank God. That's why I said. That's why I was talking to my boy yesterday, and he was just like he was telling me all the things that women require now to take them on dates, bro. I was like, oh my gosh, that's
Yeah.
crazy. Anyways, but um, but you know what I'm saying. So like, I am a huge movie person,
Yeah.
like huge. Like I love movies. Like
Yeah.
that is like I am standing in line for an hour to watch, opening night of whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
She could care
Less.
less. She might be mad at me for revealing this. She has not seen, I repeat, she has not seen Black Panther, bro. The
No.
original.
No
Like,
way.
kid you not. She has not seen it. She doesn't care to watch
Yeah,
it.
I just judge Ray, bro.
I'm like, if you could just watch it for the culture, just do it. You know what I mean? Like, but like that to me, that's crazy. So that's how much she just doesn't care about movies. And so, you know, to me, that would have been like, man, like that would have been, if I was younger, that would have been a make it or break it kind of thing for me. It was like, yo, like I need someone to relate to on movies. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
I need
Yeah.
someone to like be able to like talk through, and I wanted someone to be as excited with me about this.
Yeah.
But the reality is, when we're arguing about what to feed our kids,
Mm,
you know what I mean? Like we're like our love for movies is not going to bring us together and make,
right.
you know what I'm saying, like in that,
Right.
like
Right.
if we're having a marital issue about um trust or whatever it is, you know what I mean, like our love for movies is not what's going to bring us together and solve our problems, you know
Yeah.
what I mean,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's the essentials, it's the character, it's
Yeah.
our biblical foundation, and
Yeah.
all these things. That's what's going to bring us together. That's what's going to help us in our marriage. You know what I mean? Like, so our humility. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like that, our humility is gonna, like, for me, man. I always tell guys like and girls like, yo,
Hmm.
the best attribute, what an essential attribute that you want in a person is humility. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
humility is an essential attribute for a successful marriage. It
Right.
really
Right.
is.
Yeah.
And so things like that are what you're looking for. Like music, those could be preferences. If that happens, man, great. But I guarantee you, you guys will not be on the verge of divorce because you're not into the same music.
Right.
Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. And I think something I learned from you and some of my other married friends, I think the reason why the essentials could look so lofty is because deep down, I'll speak for myself. I think I'm looking for my wife to be the end all be all, that I've got to find you know everything I have with my friends within my wife, everything I love personally, she's got to.
mm,
And something I've learned from you and other
mm,
people is that
yeah,
your wife can't be everything to you. And I think that's another thing. That's a lie I believed for so long, that my
yes,
wife
bro.
will complete. It sounds cringe to say out loud, but it
Will
really
satisfy
was
you.
this.
Yeah,
Yeah. But like, no, like if your wife doesn't enjoy, so that's, when I go to LA, you and I go to movies, and
yeah.
so I don't know if Ray would be mad if I share the story, but I remember one time me and you were at the house and we were watching a theological debate on YouTube. And do you remember this? I mean, we
Yeah, I
just
do
we
remember
just love theology. We love,
that. Right.
defending the faith, like all of those things. And she like walked in and she looked at the screen and looked at us and was like, "Y'all watch this for fun?"
She's like, yuck.
Yeah, what are y'all doing? You know what I mean? But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember for the longest, like I had envisioned like, oh, me and my wife, we've got to like watch, Southside Rabbi together. Or we got to watch.
And
And
dissect what they're saying. Yeah.
yeah. And I think I'm learning, I have learned and I continue to learn that my wife can't enjoy or isn't called to enjoy everything that I do enjoy, that's why you still
Right.
need friendships in marriage. You know, that's why you need your
Exactly.
own individuality and your own, you know,
100%.
that like
100%.
there are going to be people in your church community that can, you know, that can do the things that you like with you, and your wife isn't
Yeah.
called to walk with you in that. And then I've also
Yeah.
learned watching you guys, and you can speak to this too, but like you and your wife also create, you know, new hobbies, or you guys find interests
Yeah.
together, and that becomes your own thing. And yeah,
Yes.
can you speak to that a little bit? Just like your wife
Yeah.
can't be everything, and you know, you find new hobbies with all of that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, like the hope, this is not for everybody, but if
Yeah.
you're on the younger side, um, the hope is that you're married longer than you were single,
Mm.
right? And
Hmm.
so um that's the hope, you know what I mean? That's not everybody's story, and that's okay, right?
Yeah.
But if that's the case, you think about, man, you have so much time
Yeah.
in marriage that you're going to have to build new things. Like you're going to change. You're going
Right.
to evolve. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think for you, like, I always tell people like, so I always hear people saying like, "Oh, I don't want someone who changes me." You know what I mean? And I'm like, dude, that's just not realistic. Like
Right. Right.
marriage will change you, hopefully in a
Mm.
positive way. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it
Yeah.
will change you. You'll be able to like your capacity will grow.
Yeah.
Your capacity for things that you didn't have capacity for in singleness will grow. My
Yeah.
capacity for people who did not like movies grew immensely, like a lot because
Yeah. Yeah.
of Ray. You know what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
just a silly example, but you know what I'm saying? Like my capacity, like I changed so much
Mm.
in marriage because of that. And so I say all that to say that like you'll be like when you're married, you'll be able to build so many new hobbies. You'll have
Yeah.
new interests. Like what you're interested in
Yeah.
now is not going to be what you're interested
That's
in 10
right.
years from now. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right. Right.
What you love now is not going to be what, like, I love movies, but I don't love it as much as I used to when we first got married.
Right.
Just
Right.
keeping it
Right.
real. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm not like out here right now, like, cause right now my main focus is like my family, my
Yeah.
kids, like
Yeah.
those are like, I'm watching more, Disney movies and
Yeah. Yeah.
Elsa and all these things than I am, you know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to like get her to like, I'm right now, my daughter who's about to be 3, she doesn't have the capacity to watch like more than like 20 minutes of TV, which is great. Thank God. Praise God
Praise
for that.
God.
But
Yeah.
your brother actually came over because your brother's a big fan of movies,
Yeah.
and that was one thing that I related to Binu. And I went one time he came over, and I was like, "Hey man, we should watch like Lion King with Naraya. We should try
Yeah.
to get her to watch Lion King." And he was like, "Oh, bet," you know what I mean? Like, or he came up with that idea. I was like, "Oh, bet," like, yeah, let's introduce a classic to her.
Yeah.
So we tried to watch Lion King with her, trying to get her interested in that. She did not have any interest in it at all. Like she was just like, after like literally 5 minutes in, she was like, "Daddy, what's for lunch?" You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I'm like, "What?
Yeah.
Like, let's focus here." You know what I mean? This is an important
Hey,
part, baby. Like,
that's Ray's daughter,
so
bro.
yeah, bro, 100%, 100%. So I'm just like, dang, like, so my interests have changed. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
so if I had made that my essential, imagine how disappointed I would be in this season of my
Mm.
life right now,
Mm. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because number one, I don't have time to watch as many movies as I used to.
Right. Right.
The things in my like because of the kids and all these things, I don't have the capacity. I mean, I don't have the freedom to watch the things that I want to watch with my
Right.
family. You know what
Right.
I mean?
Right.
Because the kid's age, whatever it is. So imagine how disappointed I would be if that was like essential in my
Right.
life, like
Right.
in my marriage.
Right. Right. Right.
Right? Does
Yeah.
that make sense? So I
Absolutely.
would live in constant disappointment if you make non-essentials essentials in marriage.
Right. Right.
Constant disappointment.
Yeah.
Because people change. So you might find a girl who's interested in music, loves music and all these things, but then what happens when that changes?
Right. Right.
what happens? If you made that a core value, a core essential part of your marriage, of why you dated her, why you married her,
Yeah.
what happens when those things change? That's why
Yeah.
you want to be able to make the essentials things that are long lasting, things that even if they change, it's evolving,
Right.
not you know what I mean? Like,
Right. Right. Right.
does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Absolutely.
man.
I love that, bro. That's a lot of great wisdom and insights. Thanks for sharing that. I did want to ask, I do value, what you bring to the table, especially someone who's been married 8 years with 2 kids. You know, I would love to ask, in your experience, what would you say are the top, again, in your experience, this is not everybody, but in your experience, what are the top two,
Yeah,
three reasons why you see people still single? And then the follow up to that is, you know, why do you think that's problematic? I think that's what
yeah,
I asked. Sorry, I think I lost
yeah,
it.
yeah. Sorry. No, I think yeah, it's good. I'm sure we can dive deeper into it too as I answer, but top three reasons why I think people are single. Um, I think number one is a lack of solid identity. Like, they don't know who they are. They don't like have a solid identity, or and if we're talking about believers,
Yeah,
they don't have a solid identity in Christ.
yeah,
Their identity is in other things.
yeah,
You that's number one. I think number two is um, community, a lack of community.
yeah.
People
Hmm.
that are godly people in their life that are able to speak
Mm.
speak to them,
Yeah,
speak into their life. Like me and you, who we're able to rebuke each other, correct each other, encourage each other. You know what I mean? All these things.
yeah,
Um, and I think the number three reason um, is probably the content they consume.
hmm. Yeah.
Maybe
Manosphere.
where Manosphere, yeah, red pill. You
Yeah,
know, they get their information from red pill communities, from the Andrew Tates.
yeah,
So maybe, yeah, maybe in my experience, what they're influenced by. I just not what they consume, but what they are influenced by, which that kind of goes into community. But yeah,
yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, those top three reasons.
So I think we touched a little bit about knowing self, identity, things of that nature.
Correct.
But I think you bring up an essential point: dating in community. I think that's
Yeah.
so important, bro. I've seen that be important in my life as a pastor. I've seen that being important in the people I lead. I just have seen time and time again, when you've got wise counsel that's able to speak into your situation, you consider people that you wouldn't have considered, and it ends up being a huge blessing in your life. Or it helps
Yeah.
you navigate difficulty in a dating like you don't find yourself breaking up for no reason, because there's
Yeah.
accountability. um I've seen how dating and community helps with getting a bigger picture of what marriage is about. And so when you're so focused on you and you're focused on your situation, you've got brothers and sisters who come alongside of you that help you see what it is that the Lord is trying to do in and through you, and attaching whatever it is that you're facing with your purpose. And so, but what the problem is, I see too many people dating in isolation. um I've this has happened to me a million times, bro. People will be dating and I'll have no idea about it. And then when they're on the like when their relationship is on the rocks and things have gone
Yeah.
terribly wrong and it's
Yeah.
gone south, that's when they bring
Yeah.
me in. And more often than not, they bring me in a
Yeah.
time where I can't like the damage has been done. But it's kind of
Yeah.
like a fourth quarter,
Speak on that.
yeah, it's like a Hail
Yeah.
Mary, like let me bring in the pastor to kind of solve all of
Yeah.
the issues that have been brewing for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's like what Dallas Cowboys did in the last 6 minutes of that game from Sunday. with the Green Bay
Yeah,
Packers.
what they do
It's like,
every year in the playoffs. Yeah, yeah. Praise God.
yeah,
And so,
no,
I wanted to ask you, like, what are the benefits of dating in community? I think we could talk about the fears of dating in community, people being in your
yeah,
business and different things like that. But actually, let's
disappointment.
do that. Let's talk a little bit about fears. Like, I want to empathize like, as there are reasons why people don't want to bring things to the light, and what are those reasons that you've seen and perceived?
Yeah, yeah. I think judgment number one.
Yeah,
I think judgment, but then that goes back to a whole. That goes back into a whole other thing. Like I think the judgment is, I think, one of the number one reasons why people are afraid to
yeah,
bring in a relationship in the community. But then that begs the question: what are you afraid to be judged on? You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
what are
yeah,
you afraid to be judged on?
yeah,
Like if it's a healthy relationship, if you're a healthy individual and she's a healthy individual, what are you afraid to be judged on? You know what
yeah.
I mean? So
And can
that
I say
that begs that.
there are two types of judgment. There's a judgment that condemns, and there's a judgment that
Yes,
corrects. And I
yes,
think we are called
yes,
as Christians to judge correctly. I think we're
yes,
called to
100%.
perceive and correct. I think it's different when somebody comes in and they talk about their relationship and you just start condemning them. Like,
Oh
you're
yeah,
foolish. How dare
for
you?
sure.
Like, you're so, I don't know. You start name calling and you start
Rude and
condemning things.
vipers,
Yeah. But I think there is a healthy judgment, not just in the
for sure.
context of dating and things. I think there's like I think we do need to be held responsible and accountable and called out. And I think, yeah. So this is the thought I had.
Yeah, and people don't want that, bro. Like people
Yeah.
in our generation, man. I mean, I don't want to go too much
You
off the
sound like
deep
an
end,
old
but man,
man.
I know,
Yeah.
I know.
This
I said our
generation.
generation. I didn't say this generation. I said our generation. I'm
Yeah.
including
Yeah.
myself in
Yeah. Yeah. It's
it.
good. It's good.
Man, we really don't want accountability, man.
Yeah.
Like accountability is just not sexy. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think that's also another reason why people don't want to do dating in community is like people just don't want to be held accountable. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? People don't want to be held to the standard that they themselves like
Right.
kind of set for themselves. So
Yeah.
um so yeah, man. I mean, I think when I completely agree with you. There's nobody should be judging somebody and rebuking or condemning them, but I think it's important that we hold each other accountable and say, hey, like, especially like what if you're already in community, people already know what the standard that you
Mm.
have. You know what I mean? So community says, hey, I know you're dating this person, but from our past conversations and from what I know about you, this is not the standard that you set for yourself.
Right.
You know what
Right.
I mean? Like,
Right.
so I want to hold you to that. Like,
Yeah.
in love, I
Yeah.
want to hold you to the standard that you set for this, you know what I'm saying? For this relationship. Like, it's just meeting that standard that you yourself set. You told me to hold you accountable for this. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right.
So that's the beauty of being able to be in community is like, you know what? Like, you're right. Because I've seen a lot of people, I'm the same way. Like, people, you think you're doing life with somebody, and then
Mm.
the next day they're like, oh, I'm dating this girl. I'm like, what?
Yeah. Hold up.
Hold on,
When
what?
did this
I was like,
happen?
that's yeah, and I'm like, that's like, man, bro, yeah, yeah. I've had that happen with people getting engaged, and I
Mm.
had no idea, and I thought we were doing life together, kind of
Wow.
thing. You know what I mean? And I was like, oh, you proposed? Like
Yeah.
that's whoa, okay. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that, like,
Yeah.
and that just tells you that like, man, I think doing things, and maybe this is too black and white thinking, but I think when you're doing things in isolation, I think, man, one of the main reasons why people do things in isolation, especially dating, is because they know that
Mm.
they're, especially if you already have community, right? This is only for those who already have community.
Yeah.
and but yet they do things in certain things in isolation. They have the community available to them,
Yeah.
but they do things in isolation. I think it's because they just know
Yeah.
that what they're doing is probably not the standard that
Yeah.
that community has for them, or the standard that they set for themselves, and they've
Right.
expressed that standard, and
Right.
they're scared that someone will hold them accountable to that standard.
Right.
You know,
Right. Right.
so
No, it's
that
good.
just that in itself should tell you that's a red flag. Like
Right.
that should in itself should tell you that, yo, that relationship is a red flag. Because for personally, if I'm in community with people that I love, um I choose a girl that like I'm like excited about, the
Yeah.
first thing I'm gonna do is tell like my boys. You know what I mean? The
Right.
first thing I'm gonna
Right.
do is tell these godly men, yo, like there's this girl. What do y'all
Yeah.
think? Like, yo, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
this is what I'm doing.
Yeah. That's right.
You
That's
know,
right.
like how do I approach this? Hey, I know you're married, man. Like, what you guys have any advice for me? Like,
Yeah.
that's what I'm thinking of
Yeah.
doing. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah. That's right.
you know, yeah.
That's good. And I want to, also clarify when we say like, dating community, that doesn't mean that everybody in the community needs to know that you're.
Oh, 100%.
There have been many times I was with someone or talking to someone. I mean, I'm a very private person, but the people that hold me accountable, the people I'm doing life with, know, right? I'm not hiding it
Yeah,
from
for
them.
sure. Oh, for
I'm
sure.
just not blasting it on Instagram.
Yeah, you're not like on a mic.
Yeah.
You're not like on a mic. Yo, hey, you know. But yeah, I
That's
mean, you
right.
just have people who, yeah, community sounds like such a large group of people, but community just means like, you have like two to three people that you're just like doing life with.
Right.
You're just like,
Yeah.
that you're able to completely be vulnerable with, whatever. So yeah, man. And I think even when you're dating, once you're dating in community,
Yeah.
like to be able to have people in community to be able to say, man, like, yo, last night we fell into sexual sin. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I don't know what to do. You know what I mean? Can you pray with me? Can't like,
Right. Right.
like
Right.
these
Right.
are like, man, I remember, dude, early on, that was a beautiful thing about like my friendships, man. I remember like early on in my relationship, um, if I was to fall, even whether if it's with Ray or with pornography, whatever it is, like I just remember it was me and my two best friends. I had the keys to the gym, the church,
Yeah.
and I would open the gym literally late at night. I mean, this is like a weekly thing. We are just talking about it, me and my boy Levi. We were just talking about it. Like we would open up the gym like at 12 a.m., 11 p.m. And we just shoot around. We play a little bit of, it was three of us. So we just play
Yeah.
21. And then after that, we'll literally just start talking and confessing
Mm.
like,
Mm. Mm.
hey, this is what I'm struggling with. I'm really dealing with this. Da, da, da. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
man, it was just such a liberating like time, bro. And
Yeah.
I really encourage people to have that.
It's good.
And while you're dating, even
It's good.
before you're dating, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
especially when you're dating, because, again, if you're in a relationship with someone who doesn't value community as much, I think that could be an essential, maybe, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
um, of someone who values community. But if you are in a relationship with someone who doesn't value his community, to be able to like show him or her the value of community, of like,
Yeah.
yo, like here's how it's benefiting my life.
Yeah.
Like, aren't you jealous? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. That's
yeah,
good, man. Yeah. And, just being, I want to be a little sensitive. I know people, there's a multitude of reasons why people aren't doing it in community. I know people have been hurt by community. People have been misunderstood. People have been taken advantage, things of that nature. But I do think that, it's still a healthy standard to set for self,
for sure.
And I think a lot of the times too, we do talk about it in the lens of accountability, which you and I have just been doing. But I also think that there's another side of it too, where you get to join in the joy
Yeah,
of a new relationship or a progressive
yeah.
relationship. I want to tell that story of you
Which one?
when you
Tell it.
FaceTime.
I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, like I remember this was what, like about a year ago, less than a year ago. I was seeing someone. And I just texted the guys. I'm like, hey, y'all pray for me. I'm going on my first, second date.
Oh yeah.
And this dude, Israel, was elated, bro. This man was so excited. I told him I'm on a date and he's trying to call me. I'm like, why are you calling me? I'm on a date, dog. And so I would call him after the date and then I would miss him and then he would call back and he'd miss me, so on and so forth. And then, so I'm on this, you know, she's out of town. So I'm on this third date or what have you within the third day. I saw her like every day for like 3-4 days or what have you. And this dude was so excited. He FaceTimed me and I was like, you know what? Instead of picking up the phone, I'm just going to have old girl pick up the phone, right? And so he FaceTime. She picks up. Israel's on the toilet. He calls me on the toilet.
That was such a vulnerable moment, bro, that I
Bro,
wanted to share with you.
yeah. When I tell you, like, I was like, where's his voice? Like, she has the phone, but I don't hear no voice coming out the phone. Like, I it just goes dead quiet. So I take the phone from her, and I immediately knew what it was, and I was like, bam. It'd be one thing if I called you and you're on the toilet. You're gonna FaceTime me on the toilet. And so that was
I didn't know you were with her, but that was, yeah. But I think that's a beautiful example of just, you know what I'm saying, being able to share in the joy, you know what I
yeah,
mean,
that's good.
of you know, the relationship with your brother or sister, you know, like I think, man, it just goes to show though, like, yeah, you know, obviously that relationship didn't work out, but
Yeah, yeah.
we were
It's
able to
because of
share in the
you,
pain.
bro.
Yeah, she
You
was like, I don't like, yeah,
you
I like
jinxed it.
backyard friends.
She was like, the people you do community with call you on the toilet. Nah, I'm good on that.
Hey man, you know what?
I'm
If she
just
can't
kidding.
accept me for who I am, you can't you can't date her, bro.
Talk about a
Nah.
first impression, though.
Yeah, I know. I was so embarrassed, bro. But you know what I'm saying? But you know but we're able to share in the joy of that in the
Yeah,
beginning phases of that, but we're also able to share in the pain of that too, you know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
that's right.
When
That's right.
when it didn't work out. And so I think, man, people really underestimate the value of community
Right.
in dating and the value of just having people to just talk to about, you know what I'm saying, like character, about what are essentials, what are non-essentials, you
Yeah,
know. And I
yeah,
like, man, my biggest plea for this generation, bro,
yeah,
yes, I said this generation,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
is to really not do life by yourself, man.
yeah.
There's so much value in community, and it is worth
Right,
doing whatever it takes to find good community. Like,
right.
it is worth doing whatever it takes, making whatever sacrifices that you need
Yeah,
to have good godly community, because it is worth it. Good community will take you a long way, man.
right,
Like,
right.
it will take you far, and yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of cliche statements that we can make about, going alone, you go fast, but going
Yeah,
with people, you go, long, far or whatever. But there,
yeah,
I mean, it just rings so true in my life, man. And I
right.
really can't, I don't know what I would do if it wasn't for my community. And I don't know where me and Ray's relationship would be if we
Yeah,
didn't have the community that we have now. Like,
yeah. That's good.
literally just last month, bro. Like, man, me and Ray were just going through it, and we went to, yeah, man, we like hit up our friends that we do life with, and man, we had such good, solid conversations,
Yeah,
and we were able to walk away like just more clear with more clarity. You
right,
know what I mean? Like,
right,
there is
right.
like 3 months before that couple hit us up, and you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
that's
and
good.
we're able to give them clarity, you know what I mean? And they walked,
Yeah,
so it's just like
beautiful.
beautiful, man. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and to have that before you're married, that's the best, bro.
yeah,
That's the best. I
yeah.
really can't emphasize that enough, for sure.
That's good, man. No, that's good. I really love this conversation. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Before we wrap up, do you have any last thoughts? Anything on your heart that you want to share when it comes to, singleness, dating, marriage, things you've learned? Maybe you have a message you want to get off your chest, or an encouragement, or whatever, a story, anything on your heart as we wrap up.
Yeah. I do have a story that I want to share, but before that, can I ask one question? I
Yeah.
really, I, I think this would be valuable to this conversation. But as a married person, I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and as a married person, it's easy for me to think in simple terms. It's easy, like when it comes to singleness, right? When it comes to singleness,
Yeah.
it's easy to make things simple for this single person, right? Oh, if you just do this and this, you'll get married. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. Right.
especially because I got married at a young age, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I got married in a completely different time than I did. So, as a single person, what advice would you give a married person to be able to sympathize, to empathize with those who are single
Yeah.
and with those who are like, searching for marriage, searching for a relationship? In what ways have I done a good job at being able to like be sympathetic towards you? And what ways have I not done a good job at like,
Where do
what
we
I'm saying,
begin?
supporting you?
No, I'm just kidding.
I was like, oh
I'm just
shoot.
kidding. No. First of all, I want to thank you for that question. I think that speaks to your humility and your heart to want to learn and be a good friend. And so I do appreciate you asking that. And I do think that more married people need to ask that question because, to your point, I think we do oversimplify singleness, and we do live in a different time. We do live in a different day and age, and it's like it's not as simple as maybe married people think it is. You know,
Mhm.
um, for one, I want to say thank you for constantly checking in and asking how I'm doing and how that journey. I mean, depending on where I'm at in life, that response is going to look different. I know there are days you've called, asked, and I'm like, I'm great, and then there are days where I'm like, bro, it's hard. And so that, I think that's the just the way it is. There's a lot of ups and downs. There are days where
Yeah,
you're so happy to be single, and then there are days where you're wondering if you'll ever get married, and that kind
yeah.
of takes a toll on you. But just being sensitive enough to know that and to just ask and to see if we're okay, I think I've really benefited a lot from that. I think your willingness to step into the conversation means a lot. I know when you don't understand something or when you're past that season or stage of life, it's very easy for you to overlook it or not
Mhm.
understand it or just kind of write it off altogether. And I have had some married friends that do that with me where they're just kind of like they don't have patience for the conversation.
Mm.
They don't want to enter into the conversation. They're not seeking to understand. But I've always I mean, you've been married 8 years. What I have to say about dating could be so trivial to you. It's just so out of context to your world, and it has really nothing to do with your life and your day to day. But for you to want to step into that, to kind of, yeah, just walk away from your life for a moment and to step into another
Mm.
person's life and to put on somebody else's shoes, it speaks volumes. And so I've greatly appreciated that as well. And then even like you celebrating, it's really, not to put my business too much out there, but it's a lot of like, there's a new person I'm with, and I was like, yay, and then it doesn't work out, and then you're like with me there, and then another person. It's really like I was thinking about this the other day. It's like I could see why there's reasons for friends not to get excited when you're with someone because there's this,
Mm.
well, we'll see how long this lasts, or
Yeah, yeah,
we'll see where this goes
yeah.
or what have you. And so, but just like the consistency and not just checking in, but like being present. So when it's a moment of joy, stepping into that, and when it's a
Mm.
moment of difficulty, stepping into that, and not, I don't know, maybe you are tired in that, but you don't show it, And so I do
Mm. Yeah.
appreciate that. Um, I just feel like I know that you pray for me. I know that I'm in your prayer
My
journal.
prayer journal for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so I do appreciate that. I think something that married people can do better, bro. I think what they can do better is to not look at a single person's dating experience through the lens of their dating experience.
Mm.
So much of their advice is a projection. And I'm just kind of like, fam. And this is not just for dating relations. This is just good leadership advice across the
Yeah,
board. But like
100%.
whenever you're speaking into somebody's life, you don't want to speak from a place that doesn't consider, I think sometimes when we hear somebody's story, we're immediately thinking about how we can relate to it, even if there's nothing relatable about it. And
Yeah,
so we try to latch on to something they say or do that resonates with something you've done or said, and then it could be a completely different scenario that you bring up in your advice giving, but because you're trying to be helpful, you're like, well, this is how you should do it because this is how it worked out for me. And I think that's harmful. I think it's harmful because A, it doesn't really consider where the person is at, and B, you know, I think that person is they're making themselves the center of
yeah,
the solution. And I don't,
yeah.
one thing I've learned.
So
Mhm.
contextualizing, right? Is that what you mean? Like in the sense, like
Contextualize.
contextualizing. Yeah,
Yeah. And if you don't understand, then say that. Don't acknowledge that
pretend
and
to
then
understand.
yeah, don't acknowledge don't not do not acknowledge. I'm tripping right now. Don't move in a way where you don't acknowledge that you don't understand and then proceed to give advice
Mm,
that has no relevance to something you don't
yeah,
understand. you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
Um,
100%.
and then I would also say for married people, your way is a way, it's not the way. Um,
Yes. Yeah,
when I look at how people got married in the Bible, bro, it looks like the way Abraham and Sarah got married is different than Isaac and Rebecca. It's different than the way
mhm.
David and Abigail got married. I mean, Mordecai. Like when you kind of like look at the scripture, there is no formula for marriage. There is no formula for
Yeah.
knowing who the one is. I always refer to David and Abigail because it's so complex. When Abigail got to David, Abigail was married to someone else.
Yeah.
And she came to David. He did something wrong. And she's like, please spare my husband. David spared him. And then the Lord dealt with him. And then David went on to marry Abigail. I was like, dang, that's really messy, you know? Uh, but like, I think
Yeah.
sometimes married people try to make it cute. And here's the 3 steps. And this is what you need to do. And if you're just in the
Right.
church and you're faithful and you put yourself out there, that's all I did. I'm like, fam, there are a lot of people who are faithful, go to church, put themselves out there, who are still
Yes.
single.
Yeah,
So
that's good, man. That's good.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I could say a lot, but those would
That-
be the.
man. Yeah, that's really humbling. No, I appreciate that answer, and I definitely appreciate. Yeah, I appreciate that because yeah, I think it's easy. I've been married 8 years, man. And I personally, I was very young when I started dating Ray, so
Yeah,
I wasn't like healthy. I wasn't in a healthy place. There, I don't have room to give advice about dating. I can give advice based off of my experience counseling people who are dating and
right,
all these things. But you know what I
right.
mean. But yeah, and spiritually being able to like help people understand their identity and all these different things. But yeah, yeah. So I
Because
appreciate that, man. That's
because
really helpful.
I want to say that I think you have a lot of principles, insights,
Yeah.
knowledge. But I think that what I heard somebody once say this, and it just kind of always stuck with me. Wisdom is your ability to juggle principles.
Yes.
So as you're
Yes.
hearing somebody talk about something,
Yes.
wisdom is you looking through the Rolodeck of all the insights and principles that
Yes.
you have, and you're
Yeah.
just trying to see what's applicable here, what's most helpful here, what would speak,
Yep.
and so instead of just,
Yeah.
hey, you said this, here's a principle, that lacks wisdom,
Yeah.
and so yeah.
Right. Right. No, I love that. Yeah, man. But yeah, man, I think, yeah, I think that to end with a story,
Yeah.
I'll tell you about a story. Cause yeah, I was meeting up with a brother of mine and we just were talking. You know, he's like in the church, serving in the church and all these things. And it started one of these things where he just told me, yeah, he's like, yo, um, there's this girl that I like. You know what I mean? I think I'm gonna pursue her. And I was like, oh, that's what's up. You know what I mean? I was excited for him. And I said, hey, you know, and I don't normally don't ask if someone is in the church, they're serving in the church. I normally don't ask, is she a believer? Because
Yeah.
that's essential.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's a given. So we are just talking about all these different things about her, and all he's telling me all these things. And then something tells me it was the Holy Spirit. Spirit presses my heart to puts an impression on my heart to ask him, is this girl, does she love the Lord? You know what I mean? And I was like, what? Duh, like of course she does. I was like, I'm not, whatever. I kind of, I was like, I'm not gonna ask that.
Yeah.
Talking about this girl, da, da, da. And then just the Holy Spirit just presses it, bro. Presses me. I was like, all right, all right.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey man. I was like, does this girl love the Lord? He was like, man, we haven't talked about that yet. But man, like, man, this is I was like, huh? I was like, what? I was like, what do you mean you haven't talked about that yet? I mean,
Yeah.
you're essentially telling me you're dating her at this point. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everything he's telling me, he's like telling me that, like, oh yeah, they've been on a few dates. They've been on like date number 3. They're like kind of about to take it to, he's asking me, he's actually asking me about possibly asking her to be his official girlfriend. That's what
Yeah.
it was. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I was like, wait, you haven't talked about that yet. I was like, what do you mean, bro? Like, you don't know if she's a believer or a Christian? Because I mean, yeah, she used to go to the church, a while back. I
Mm.
was like, but does she still go to church? He was like,
Right.
we haven't talked about that yet, but we're going to. And I completely changed my tone to like being joyful and like yada da to be like, yo, like this is essential, And I kind of just talked to him, but he was just so shocked and kind of like, I mean, at the end of the conversation, he just straight up told me. I mean, he literally straight up told me, he's like, you know what? He's like, this is the decision I made. I'm gonna pursue her no matter what.
Mm.
I was like, oh, okay. I was like, cool. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. But I think I was really shocked at how much that was not a consideration.
Right.
Like that she does she love the Lord? Like that was not a consideration
Yeah. That's right.
in your pursuit of her. And I
Yeah.
and I was very shocked at that, man.
Yeah.
And so like I think I tell this story often because
Mm.
it is not the first time I heard that. You
Mm.
know what I mean? From people who love the Lord, who like are serving and all these things, but for
Yeah.
some strange reason they have
Yeah.
compartmentalized dating as something that is outside of their faith or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's just
Right.
like maybe it's an LA thing. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe it's
No.
an
No.
LA
No.
thing.
It's a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm just like, wow, like that's okay. That's very interesting. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. This person's not like the like hardcore like I love the Lord. I'm gonna everything about my life is about the Lord. Jesus is the center of my life. But he was like in the church. He was like he goes to church regularly. He's a believe. He considers himself as a believer. He considers himself as a follower of Christ. All these things. So I'm just to me that was like wow that tells me a lot about like who Christ is for you and
Right.
and what like where he falls in your life, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
anyways, I don't know, I guess my biggest encouragement for people is like, yo, like if you are a follower of Christ, man, I pray that that is the center of your life. I pray
Right.
that every
Right.
decision you make
Yeah. That's good.
is revolved around,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like revolved around your faith, that your faith is what forms you,
Yeah.
that your faith is what forms your worldview, that your faith is what forms, that the word of God is what forms is the word of God is what forms your faith. And I pray that your faith forms your worldview. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
That's
Like,
good. That's good.
I just like I really cannot emphasize that enough because you might find it easier to not talk about faith in the beginning aspect of your dating relationship, but it's going to get a lot harder to like the deeper you go into the relationship, the harder it is to become to start talking about to have that conversation about faith. You know what I'm saying? Like,
That's good.
so I
Yeah.
think people think, oh, you know what? I'm not going to bring it up now. I'm going to I'm going to just like get to know them, see what they're about, da, 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 and then I'll bring up the faith thing,
Right.
right?
Right.
But I'm telling you, the more you get to know them outside of the faith thing, the more feelings you'll develop for them. Then you kind of fall into this relationship. Then you'll be dating this person, and then all of a sudden, you know what I'm saying? Like you're compromising your faith, and then you're like,
Yeah.
well, let's like when they want to compromise their faith with you or your faith, when they ask you to do something that compromises your faith, you're like, whoa, 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 like, hey, like I'm a Christian,
Right.
follow Christ. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
And they're like, oh, well, I didn't think that was a big deal. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
didn't make it seem like a big deal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you set the standard in this dating. Like, while we were dating, you set the standard that that's not the center of your
Right.
life. Why is it all of a sudden now the center of your life? You know what I mean?
Right.
And so now it becomes harder to get out of that relationship because you've built so much emotion and so much
Yeah.
whatever love for this person, and it's like now you find yourself like finding it hard to leave the relationship. Does that make
Right.
sense? So
Yeah. Absolutely.
I've seen it too many times, man, and
Yeah.
that's my biggest encouragement for people, bro.
That's good. I think it was Spurgeon who said, "If he's not the Lord of all, he's not Lord at all." And
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
that if the Lord isn't in your dating process and in your decision making as you kind of swift through or decipher who's right and who's not when it comes to a spouse, yeah, maybe there's something off there, and so
right,
that's helpful.
right,
Thank you for sharing that, and I think that that's a good warning even for those. I think being equally yoked isn't just two believers coming together. I think we have to define what, even if he was with a Christian, what kind of Christian, right? And I think that that's important to note as
yeah,
well, making sure that someone is truly following after Jesus.
yeah,
You
yeah.
never. Go ahead.
Good.
I was gonna say, KB once said, I'd rather lose trusting God than win trusting man, and so
Yes.
the heart behind that is, there is no loss when you do it God's way.
Yep.
You will always come out better when you do it the way the Lord has called you to do it. And so, thank you for sharing that story.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, amen. But dude, I literally also just talked to another person last night about like they're kind of deep into this relationship, and you know, and he's just now telling me, he's like, yeah, he's like, she's Christian, she believes in God, but it's a different Christian, and he's like, now he's finally sensing the tension of their kind of
Right.
different beliefs,
Right.
maybe like 9 months into the relationship, and
Mm,
he's now like telling me, he's like, dude, I don't know what to do. I'm like,
mm,
and I didn't tell him in this way. I didn't tell him this, but I was like, why did you start this relationship in the beginning? Like, why was this not
right.
a conversation in the beginning? You know what I mean? Like, and my heart broke for him, man. Like, my
Right.
heart broke for him because he really likes this girl. So
Right.
now he like praying
Mm,
about possibly ending the relationship.
yeah.
And I'm like, man, it breaks my heart, man. I'm like,
Yeah.
damn, it sucks. Like, that
Yeah.
sucks to invest
Could have
that
been
much
avoided.
time
Yeah.
and that much. Yeah. So man,
That's real.
that's my heart for people, man, that they don't fall into that.
That's good, man.
Discernment, man. Discernment is
It's,
important to have in dating. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Discernment, man. Oof. You can't have too much discernment. I'll tell you that much.
That's why you need community. That's why you need mentors. That's why you need resources. There's so much
Yes.
out there. Yeah. Well, this was good, bro. I thoroughly enjoy my conversation with you always. It's cool to kind of have you come on the platform and you know
Man.
just talk and
Yeah,
give
man.
people the behind the scenes of some of the conversations we've been having and some of the things that we've experienced. And so I really appreciate you. Love you.
Love you.
Your support. You're a good friend, man. Like I told Israel a couple of days ago that I need like 300 minutes watched before I can start monetizing on YouTube. And this brother just goes and on like 4 or 5 different tabs, pulls up like hour-long interviews and just He does everything he could to get me those minutes. YouTube doesn't acknowledge it for whatever reason. It never came through or didn't.
Still
Nah,
never came
bro.
through.
It didn't come through. So I'm still,
Maybe
for
it
those
takes
who
a
are
week.
watching, make sure you hit the subscribe button, the like button. We are, yeah, just literally 300 minutes away from being monetized on here. So help a brother out. But thank you for
Subscribe
loving on this
right here.
podcast, supporting it. You know, thank you for even listening to it. You'll text me, hit me up and be like, yo, this episode just blessed me. And so, yeah, man, I appreciate you more than you know. And it's an honor to have you on this podcast and have this conversation with me. So thank you.
Hey man, this honor is mine. The privilege is all mine, bro. You know, I love you. Yeah, you mean a lot to me, man. I'm just so that you counted me worthy to be on your platform. So
Always.
you know, let it be known that KB and Preston and Jackie have been all on this platform. So to share in the same platform as these high caliber people.
Yeah. Yeah. You on that level, bro.
It's
You
an
there.
honor, bro.
You right there.
All right. Love you,
I
bro.
guarantee you, if people apply the wisdom that you shared today, it'll revolutionize their relationship. So
I hope so, man. I hope so.
Right. Well, thank y'all listeners for tuning in. Hope you're blessed by this episode as much as I've been blessed by it. Until next time, family, peace and grace.